All right, Nick, you ready? You ready to do the show?
Yeah, I'm good. Let's do things.
All right. Hello, and okay, go ahead, Nick. You said you were going to be. I was going to be you, and I'm happy to be.
Hello
you.
and welcome to the year we started the podcast.
Go ahead, finish it off.
Oh, hold on, let me tab over to the thing here real quick. As Jeff, I am never prepared, and I have the nasally voice. Don't ask. I am your co-host. Hello, welcome to the year we started the podcast born Phoenix-like from the ashes of the prior year's podcast.
Oh my gosh! I can't even.
That voice actually hurt me. I feel
can't
bad
follow
because
through.
you don't have. No, I don't. I think we should start over.
Welcome to the year we started a podcast. It's a podcast born Phoenix-like from the ashes of the podcast that got started a few seconds ago, and also the prior year's podcast. I am your co-host, Jeff.
Nice. I feel really bad. I'm your other co-host, Nick.
And this is our podcast where a couple of friends that are half a continent apart that would like to come in there and talk about it. Blah, blah, blah. Nick, actually, you know what? Internet. The reason why we did this was because Nick, in all of his glorious podcasting skills, is exceptional at many things. But one of them is canceling on me twice during this week's recording.
That's how I do that.
And so I texted, like, here's how my day goes on recording day, Nick. We don't talk to each other about the recording that we're about to do that day, typically until, at least I feel like on an early day, it's like 10 a.m. my time, so I assume about when you get up. But there's some times where it like creeps into the late afternoon. It's just like, hey, just checking in to make sure we're still doing podcasts together. and also, do you have something to talk about this week? Because I don't, or vice versa. And so we did that a couple times. Had a couple of recording mishaps, so we had to push back our recording a couple days. And
mishaps is a very kind way for you to say that. I just want to
a couple Nick-centric mishaps, at least from my perspective. I don't know what all went behind the scenes, but anyways, So Nick had to push the recording a couple days in a row, and so today I texted Nick to make sure that he was still good to record by asking him if I needed to start practicing my Nick impressions.
I don't know why my impression of you is nasally. I'm pretty sure my voice is more nasally than yours. So I've never thought of your voice as nasally. I was just doing it to make funny. Like, hey, I'm Jeff, but I don't think it's a valid way to make fun of you.
Well, anyways, so yeah, what did you say? You said I could play the part of Nick this week?
Yeah, you could be Nick.
Yeah.
Why don't you just do this long topic here? I've helpfully given you some notes. I've given you the name, which was 4.
Man, I took back over the reins, then completely crashed the plane right back into the ground. Nick, I want to know, man, we're going to have to maybe fly through a couple of these things, but I want to know, this was a podcast that I think we mutually probably listened to this week, depending on where you're at with your backlog of podcasts. But what do you do with your contacts on your phone? Do you purge them? I feel like I should ask you this because
so I haven't listened to most of my podcasts this week. And
okay, well, you'll figure out what it is later.
Yeah, okay.
But I want to
continue.
I want to know, because I feel like if there's anybody in my life that is particular about keeping their, well, I mean, Nick, you're Mr. No social media. Do you purge contacts in any regularity at all? Or do you have like contacts from people that are, some random acquaintance from 20 years ago?
I still have my freaking I'm looking through here to find like the most dumb. I found a person who I did like a group project with in 2012 in my contact list here. I don't think I've talked to them since 2012.
Thank
God. Do you think it's okay for me to delete their contact? It's been 9 years. Do you think it's safe?
I mean, do you have any intention of following up with this person at any point in your life?
I vaguely recall Deontay being a really nice guy, is all I'm saying.
If you accidentally butt dialed this person, how quickly would you have to just call it quits on this phone number and change the numbers?
Oh man, my list for that, like as I'm looking at my contacts right now, it's a pretty big list. Like the majority of the M's are not people that I know anymore.
No, it's so wild. I was looking through it, and like one of the numbers is from a corporate phone of a person that I haven't worked with in, I think, 8 years.
There you go.
Which they turned in their corporate phone 8 years ago. So, like, it's not even like, oh man, I would hate if I called this random person. This is the most useless phone number I've ever had. Like, this is 100% a contact that is nothing to do with the person that is associated with. But yeah, no, I was just like, I felt very seen because I'm definitely not the person to purge contacts because I guess you just never know. You never know when you're gonna.
Lazy. It's not about me being like I just deleted that person that I said.
Good work.
But I'm not going to go through this. This is a lot of stuff. I think that's a problem. Is that it's a compound problem. The longer that I wait, the more people there are. Although I do find it very annoying when I have to scroll really far.
Right. But like Nick, like here's one. So I have one named Jim Neighbor, which was my neighbor named Jim. Yeah. That I have not lived next to for like 4 years now. He moved like out of state. I mean, Nick, we've talked about how I am as a person. I'm not the type of person that's going to like get super close with my neighbors. Like that's just not the thing that I'm good at doing. I especially am not going to get close to my neighbors that I haven't seen or lived next to for half a decade. So probably don't need that one. I just clicked to delete it and I accidentally almost called him.
Well, what is it?
That would have been bad.
If you look at someone and they have a last name and like a little, instead of like a company thing, it says from someone's party, but I still don't know who. Like I have a full name and somebody's party who I apparently must have met them at that party, and I still don't know who that is. I still don't have context clues. I don't know who you are, man. Oh my gosh. What does that say? Is that good? I don't think you need those. I don't know. I thought it was very funny because I went through some of mine and I'm like, oh my gosh, I am like the world's worst offender at this. Not super surprising. I mean, I barely read my text messages. It's not surprising that I don't go through and purge my contacts, but when you put people in your phone, do you do first name, last name, or do you do like nicknames of people or? So I stopped putting people's nicknames unless it's like their nickname that they go by all the damn time. I try to do full names, and then I try really hard if it's somebody that I don't know very well to put in a content like a in the company. I try to keep either their company or how I know them.
That's good. How is your wife in your phone, if you don't mind sharing?
She is currently in there as wifey, actually.
Really?
Yeah.
Do you want to guess at what mine is?
I don't know. Is it just Katie?
Mine is Katie Schesser. Yeah.
Katie Schesser, yeah.
I like ripped the Band-Aid off a while back and I only put people in by first and last name unless I do have one of the people on my phone as stupid insurance guy when our Ford Escape caught on fire and we had to be one of the first people on a recall and I had to talk to this insurance guy at Ford I don't even know who he was, but we had to talk I don't know, probably 50 times to finally get everything covered on that. But aside from when my car catches on fire for a recall, I typically just put people in first name, last name.
No, I think that's the right attitude. I will also tell you that as I'm doing this, I should have put more last names in my life. That's a mistake I made.
It feels a little Spartan to do it. Like it feels like I'm just like I don't know.
Spartan's the right word. Yeah.
But like the utility is very nice because if I didn't have like first name, last name for some of these people, I would have no idea why they're there. All right, well that we've talked 10 minutes now on the fact that you've pushed a podcast and contacts. Nick, real quick, last week I think it was we talked about how we talked about driving. You mentioned like if you survey everybody, something like 75% or something like that, people will say that they are an above average driver. Does it sound familiar?
Yep. I don't remember the exact number, but the number is far too high.
The number is more than 50%, therefore not possible. And I said, well, for sure, I consider myself a below average driver. And you came to my defense and said, you've never had any issues driving with me. Which I appreciate.
Oh, no. I jinxed it. I'm so sorry.
No, you didn't. No, that would be great. Recently we were doing some stuff with our kids. We're going on a little bit of a very, very, very tiny one-day trip with the kids for my son's birthday. And my wife, the kids were being just so they were being kids on a car trip. And so I asked if I could listen to a podcast. And so I was listening to a podcast, and Katie listened to what I thought was her book she had been reading, but she actually listened to our most recent episode where I talk about the fact that I am a below average driver as we're driving with our entire family.
What? Why would that be bad?
And she's just like,
why could that go badly?
And then like afterwards, she's like, yeah, I enjoyed it. It was a little awkward when you talked about how you were a below average driver, and I look over at you and you're driving our entire livelihood down the road. But aside from that, it was a good episode.
Not just your livelihood. I mean, like, you know, the purpose
life.
of living. Yeah.
Right. Where, yeah, also in that same episode, I talked about how that was like a thing that I cared about as far as purpose goes. So
I'd like to tell you that the most uncomfortable I've ever been in my life is when my dad and brother-in-law got in my car. And the last time I had been driving, I was listening to our podcast, and it just started auto-playing my podcast of me talking. I felt like the most egotistical human being in the entire world. I rushed to mute my freaking like so fast. Like, no.
Oh no, that makes me feel
in a moment of shame as bad. I can't imagine. I can't believe you. Well, no, it's different with your wife, right? Like your wife already knows, and she's already up. But like anybody else, not
that makes
okay.
me feel 10 out of 10 awkward. Like oh my gosh, that is terrible. It reminds me of a thing that I definitely cannot talk about on air. But after this episode, remind me that there was an awkward thing this week. I'll tell you. It is literally 10 out of 10 cringe as well.
Oh, good. Okay, great.
Nick, last week you put something about when do you know when to cut something, and it like has been driving me mad you told me that I needed to stop and actually talk about my topic last week, which I think was a good call. But it still hasn't made me stop wondering what on earth were you talking about.
So you read cut as an editing thing, and I bet you that's so what I was trying to get at is when do you cut habits from your life? When do you cut habits from your life? Far
too late.
And how do you know it's the right thing to cut altogether? And how do you know that that it's not a symptom and that it's actually the problem? So after before we started this last week, I Googled a little bit, and then I was like, well, there's a lot that I could learn here, and you get a lot of pseudo psych nonsense articles from all of the generic websites that want to have some where it's just an opinion article with no information at all. The reason I didn't have this as a main topic this week, and the reason I didn't put it is because I'm pretty sure that in order to adequately speak on this subject, I would need to read several books and several studies. I'm pretty sure that I couldn't do this justice. We could have a not authoritative conversation on it, but I would literally feel bad trying to be authoritative about how do you know when to or to pretend that a couple articles read here and there gave me some kind of psychological or self-help level understanding of when is the appropriate time to change habits in your life.
You're such a better person at controlling what you do on a day-to-day basis than I am. To even think about that. I definitely do. I have opinions on it, but I am so bad at actually executing on that. I let outside influences be so much stronger than they ought to be when making that sort of call. I think, because really for me, the answer to that would be, when does the enjoyment, whenever that is far outweighed by the anxiety or stress or the
opportunity
the
cost
weight
of something else.
Yeah, when does the weight of that outweigh the benefit, for a consistent amount of time? Because there's lots of honestly, even this podcast, it is. There are some weeks where it's really hard to fit in, and that's hard. But there's other weeks where it's a blast, and I enjoy it quite a lot. And so, it on the average, the enjoyment and satisfaction that I get, tenfold outweighs, having to occasionally stay late or wake up early and edit or try to deal with my co-host canceling twice in a week to do recording.
That happens often.
Actually, you're not too bad. I'm surprised at how rarely that happens. But no, I that is an example of I don't. like, yes, it is sometimes stressful, but I really, really enjoy it. And it's honestly not that big of a cost because, we do our little couple hour recording and then I can figure out when to record or when to edit after that. And it's fun and people listen and it's cool. But like, there are definitely other things where it is a huge amount of time sink, a la video games. And it really has to be worth, that really has to be worth that squeeze because
it really does.
There, especially if you're doing it with friends, you have that guilt of like, oh man, I really need to spend 12 hours playing this video game with these people in order to not be a burden, and that is a lot of time. And that I don't know that is the sort of thing that I am bad though at, like equally weighting the amount that I will be letting people down compared to the weight that it is in my life. But
right. So the thing here is, or like what I wanted to find out, because I think that everything you said is, and not to take away from your insight with it, but I think like most people would broadly agree with that, right? Like would broadly be like, yep. And you just got to outweigh the positives versus the negatives, and the negatives can be all kinds of damn things. It could be stress in the moment, it could be stress leading up to it, time commitment, that opportunity costs, the specific time that it happens, whatever, lack of sleep, who knows, right? Trillions of things. But trillions is an exaggeration, but a lot of things.
That is a lot.
But so I was wondering, kind of, are we good at answering that question? Are we good at assessing those things? I don't think so.
No, you're correct. We're not.
Right.
Yeah.
So one thing for me, you say that I'm good at this. I am good at choosing to excise things from my life. What I'm not good at is then repurposing that time effectively, or repurposing time effectively. I feel like I am productive and am I do think I'm productive with my time. I do think that I do have priorities decently down, but I also feel like my downtime is like almost never good. The time
what do you fill it with though? Because you don't do social media stuff.
Like, that's what I'm saying is nothing. Is like at this point, it just I take away.
I don't understand.
What I mean is like YouTube, or I'll just mindlessly listen to podcasts, or I'll like mindlessly listen to music or something dumb. Just really dumb content, like really low level, like just me intentionally going through YouTube, like, is there anything long I can listen to or watch or whatever? And
what percentage of the things that you listen to in those times are things that you have subscribed to versus things that are on the algorithm fed stuff? 50-50?
Like 50-50. But, and even algorithm fed stuff, I usually just get bored and like don't like the algorithm stuff, and then I spend a lot of time not doing that. I will occasionally go back to video games that I know that I don't like. And it's like, why am I still playing this game in 2021? What am I doing? Yeah. And so that was like something that prompted me, as I realized that I play a game sometimes that I don't play enough to be good at anymore. I'm worse at it than I ever was. And I occasionally told myself, when I started playing it again somewhat recently, it was because during the pandemic, a different friend of mine played, and I was like, oh, I'll play with Jay sometimes. That's great. It's been cool. But at the same time, I don't really play it with Jay that often, but during the day when I get really bored and I feel like I need a break from work, I'll turn it on for 30 minutes, and every time it's an annoyed 30 minutes. Every time I'm like, what do I do? This is stupid and dumb. So I uninstalled it. And I was like, why am I so bad at knowing whether this is a bad thing for me to have in my life? Yeah, that's all.
Either one of us, given enough time to research on that, would also have lots of interesting things to say about it. But I see why that would be a topic that is,
hard to try to pretend that I'm an authority on. I will say, speaking on this with my sister for a little bit, like not this specifically, but something kind of tangentially related to this, just because it was in my head. She actually gave me a book that's kind of related about how to frame that she said touches on or focuses on how to frame your like work-life balance and your priorities and things, and prioritizing things based on the positive outlook of it, like basically trying to find the time to do the things that you prioritize instead of trying to find things to cut that you're not enjoying. And that's a good outlook that I could do.
What's it called? Can you, because I've read so many of these dumb books.
The book is called Triumphs of Experience, 5 Major Takeaways from an Incredible Study.
It's not one that I've read, thank gosh, because otherwise I'd have opinions, because I have so many opinions in all of them.
No, that's totally okay. It's not about that implicitly. It's about a Harvard grant study of several men in their hundreds. So like it's about their like the long form of their life, like a very long look at their life and what's made them happy and something. I don't know. I don't know that much about it, except for that my sister was talking about how one of their things that they were talking about inside of it was that framing of, find more time to spend with your wife, find more time to exercise, find more time, not cut the bad thing. The bad things will get cut. The thing that you'll naturally select for the things that are not a priority if you do that, right? Yeah.
Totally makes sense. Yeah. Nick, before we hop into your main topic, I do since I thought it was an editing question for so long, I would like you to ask me what makes it something that I want to cut from the show versus not cut from the show, because I thought about it so much, because I thought that's what you're going to ask me instead of all this very deep, more nuanced stuff that matters much more broadly.
I don't know if it's that deep or that nuanced. I mean, it's an important question, I think, but I don't know if it's that. If I'm not like deep because I'm like I should stop playing this video game. What a deep question.
What do you think makes it, like, if I listened back to that last bit? What do you think is the thing that makes me decide whether that's that's good for the podcast? Which is awkward to ask because I don't know if I think it's good for the podcast yet or not. So maybe I'm talking about something that didn't even happen for you, listener.
I would think that you would go for the thing, like you'd try to remove superfluous rambling, and I think that you would try to remove things that don't lead directly into a point or a joke.
That's pretty good. Really, that is pretty good. Here's what I would add to that is when we first record, there's been only one or two times where I've had to we get off this recording and we stop, we get the stuff uploaded, I download it, get it all in Audacity, do all my leveling, and then do the edit. Okay, the same day. That is the worst possible way to do this sort of thing. What I like to do is have a day or two separate. Honestly, even 24 hours is plenty good. As long as it's not the same flipping day. If I can sleep on it and let some of these conversations age a little, I typically know what are the things that were there's certain things that I just love. Because I think back at them from our conversation from yesterday or the day before or whatever, and I'm still laughing about how that was a really funny way to talk about whatever it was. Very self-induced or whatever the word is there. But I really enjoyed the way we talked about it. And then there's the things where I found it very interesting and I'm not sure how good you or I expressed ourselves in explaining that thing and how interesting it was.
That's fair.
And it's I know so quickly when I actually listen back to those parts, is this an interesting thing, or is this something that I cringe so hard listening at? And it's not you did bad or I did bad particularly. It's just man, this conversation did not accurately portray how interesting this topic is. And I don't even need to listen very far into it until I'm all right, I need to start figuring out where the next bit is, because this needs to go. There's no part of anything I'm going to listen to after this that was worth the listen for the first 2 minutes or 3 minutes of the podcast to get to that point. It's way, way too bad at expressing the idea, and I don't want to subject our poor listeners to that. And
that's fair. I think that's a good.
It's just it's very weird though, because it's not like I listened to the entire thing and I'm okay, what do I think? It's there's some things that I enjoy and I just laugh while we listen, and I just edit out our little ums and doubling back on top.
You just clean it up or whatever. Yeah,
I clean it up. I'm cleaning it up, but by and large, I'm just laughing and listening as we go along. And then there's ones where oh man, I don't know how I feel about this. Oh man, I feel uncomfortable. Oh man, it's like my social anxiety is really good at this, because I don't like being awkward around other people, and so the thought of doing this awkward conversation around the thing that we're doing a bad job about is turned up to 11, and so I'm really, really happy to do this. Well, nope, that conversation is gone, and maybe this will be gone too. I'm not sure, but
who can say? Well, you can say. You're
and I will. Nick, I want to hear about your main topic this week. I have no idea.
My last topic for this week is about 4-day work week, because I feel like read.
Oh my gosh.
I feel like I have read about 1 trillion headlines about 4-day work weeks, and so I decided to finally dive in and try to learn more about stuff, and I didn't find conclusive stuff because I tried to find all kinds of stuff. Do you have any opinion on the idea of a 4-day work week?
I do have opinions on a 4-day work week on our episode 4, but Nick, I want to know.
Wait, did you really? Did we already talk about this? Am I the worst?
Nick, I appreciate I'm sure that all the time that you've spent preparing for this podcast that required it to be delayed by a couple days was mainly focused on how you could tie it into the episode number. As we typically do, most of our episodes do tie into our episode number.
Jeff, genuinely, I swear that wasn't why I missed out on days. It wasn't because I needed research. Jeff, I'm the worst. Did we talk about this on episode 4 already? Did you already do this a deep dive?
What? No.
Did you already do a deep dive on it?
No. I just said episode 4, like episode 44. We're on episode 44.
Oh, you didn't talk about this already.
No, I was just making a joke about how it's episode 44 and how much I appreciate you spending. Anyways, it was a joke. well landed. Apparently.
I thought that you said that you did it on episode 4 already. Jeff, I'm a big dum-dum.
I may have. We'll see what the edit guy says in post. But anyways,
the edit guy, I don't trust that guy.
So Nick, 4-day work week. That's crazy. I'm sure that I'm editing. Okay, so 4-day work week. Yeah, I definitely have opinions.
What is your opinion right now? Do you think that it sounds like it would be effective? You work in a specific corporate environment. Like, let me in your. Like, do you think it would be a feasible thing for you and your team?
Not only am I in an environment where that is something that is relevant, but also have been a part of discussions on this, like what that looks like over the next handful of years. Dude. I have 2 opinions on this. One is, do I personally, Jeff, that does not share... This is not an opinion that is representative of the company that I work for. I personally do think that it probably wouldn't impact productivity negatively at all, and likely would impact productivity positively, and it would impact mental health positively.
Yep.
In my industry, depending on I guess this is where it gets hard. It depends also on what your job is.
Right.
Like if I want to think of my job as tech, then yes. If I want to think of my job as a barista at Starbucks, then obviously that's a different conversation. And that same sort of thing goes probably, like, I know in retail, I would assume that there are, managers and such that are paid salary and that work 40 hours a week. If you work in retail and you only work 32 hours a week but get paid the same amount, like, that's more complicated.
You know this already, that I worked my first job was retail, or first jobs were all retail, and I worked a variety of roles in them, and I can tell you that at all times I felt overworked. In every single role, I felt like we didn't have enough hands on deck. And I can imagine a world where, like, and also everyone there felt underpaid. I can't imagine that, like, paying people less if they're on hourly things would work well. And one of the things that I saw was that, we think about the 40-hour work or dropping to a 4-day work week, and we think of white collar work. But others have noted the possible drawbacks for lower wage hourly workers, in particular, groups that would lose income and are sometimes left out of the conversation. Very often when we think about life and conflict and overwork, we have a vision of white collar workers in mind. Daniel Schneider, a Harvard Kennedy school professor, said, you're not going to, like, unload an Amazon warehouse truck. You know what I mean? Like, you still need hands to unload Amazon warehouse trucks, just the exact same amount, I'm sure, right? So there's definitely a lot of blue collar work that I think would, and just, entry level work that would be much harder to transition over. I don't mean to be negative about it, and I don't mean to take over for your thing. It's literally one of my points that I had written down here.
Just so I can concisely state what my opinion is on 4-day work week. I think there are certain professions where it would be a great benefit, and I also I consider the prospect quite dubious with how I think it actually gets integrated with respect to the United States. I do think there are probably other countries that are better at doing that sort of thing than we are. I don't. Maybe you'll convince me otherwise. I don't see it fitting into our mindset maybe there'll be, like I said, maybe there'll be tech companies that do that sort of thing, or maybe there'll be other, more specific industries, but I just, by and large, I don't think we're going to fast forward 5 years from now or 10 years from now and have the regular work week be 32 hours a week. I just don't think that's going to be a thing.
But I don't either. So to get it out of the way, I think the idea of a 32-hour work week or a 4-day work week or there's a lot of different things that are thrown out. I found out. I did not know that. I have not heard of people talking about like doing 6-hour days instead of 8-hour days, or doing 5-hour days without a lunch break, which are two other things that have been talked about a lot and thrown out a lot. Although 5-hour days, that's getting down to 25 hours. It's pretty damn substantial. That's aggressive, right? And I tried to read a variety of stuff, and one of the things I found out is that there's a lot of studies on how it's gone in individual companies or individual test cases, but I don't think that people have a really strong sense of like exactly how it would impact every industry, or like what delineates why it was working. There's a really prominent example of Microsoft did a 4-hour or 4 hour. I keep saying 4 hours. I apologize.
4-hour work week. I sign up right now.
I'm down. I don't care how much you pay me. You pay me $10,000 a year. I'm in. But no. So I apologize to our listeners, and to Jeff for his editing later. But so one of the big prominent examples is that Microsoft did a pilot in Japan for it, and they said that their productivity as measured by sales per employee actually went up dramatically. I have the number here someplace. If you just let me find it, Jeff.
All right, I'll let you find it.
Microsoft's results, year over year, sales per employee went up by almost 40%, which is that number doesn't make sense to me. That number seems to be insane. But the it's a pilot program and it's a small sample of just one company doing it. So there's and then also Microsoft went back on it and decided not to adopt it. So wow. I don't know how to feel about that. They said that they may return to it in the future. I don't know. Iceland did a study with in a pilot program where they did it for they use about 1% of the population or the working population, and it was so successful. I didn't find explicit numbers. There's a huge study that was that's public called "Going Public: Iceland's Journey to a Shorter Working Week." That was just released 2 months ago. But now 86% of the working population is either moving to it or going to move to having the option of a 4-day work week. So I mean, they are absolutely all in, which is dramatic.
That's a lot.
Yeah, I mean, 86%. I can't imagine 86% of our country. But to your point, in an NPR article about it, a guy who's been studying it, Peter Capelli, a professor of management at the Wharton School of the University of Pennsylvania, says the concept runs counter to Americans' notion of work. Unions are less powerful and workers have less political sway than in other countries. So American companies answer to shareholders. And he's, quote, I just don't see contemporary U.S. employers saying, you know what, if we create more value here, we're going to give it to the employees. I just don't see that happening. And I could definitely see a world where that shortchanges the low-level workers, to your point from earlier, that like I don't know how it works in every single. I mean, in tech, you're totally right. Another example from that same NPR article was talking about a company, WildBit, that switched to it, and she said, we had shipped more features than we had in recent years. We felt more productive. The quality of our work increased. So then we just kept going with it. And I mean, it makes sense. They literally, she said that they shipped more features and that their productivity went up and yada yada. I mean, that's to me, that's a pretty good endorsement of how it could work in tech, but not everything's tech.
No, not everything's tech. I feel like this feels very much like the work from home shift in honestly all industries, and how different companies react to that. And like, I feel like despite the fact that there may have been very successful work from home situations, that many people, many companies, many people in leadership are reluctant to truly embrace that long term. I do feel like that kind of that makes this even more unlikely. It feels like maybe I'm wrong, but that hesitancy definitely.
Do you think that's just a workplace culture hesitancy? Like, not? Do you feel like that's something that is not rooted in like fact, or is it and just rooted in like kind of old school corporate opinions, or do you think that's something that like might have validity?
I think you mean like with the hesitancy to really truly adopt work from home.
Yeah. I meant work from home or in this context. I mean, for both. Yeah. I think the conversation is kind of intertwined, right?
They're intertwined. I do feel like I could probably separate them to some degree, but
yeah.
For the work from home stuff, I feel like it is a fear, and I don't say fear in a bad way. I feel like I have a perspective where I can kind of see both sides on this.
Yeah.
It is a fear of what that will do to the culture of an organization. And if you're the leader of an organization, putting your culture at risk is putting your company at risk. And depending on the situation that you're in, like that is a very scary thing. And again, like not saying scary is a bad thing. Like that is a very big risk that has very high consequences if gone wrong, and you have a very safe way of doing things, which is having people in the office and being able to have typical, like the things that you have probably, if you're in that position, you feel like you have an understanding of from the past probably 20 or 30 years of doing it. Yep. So there's that. And that obviously, again, depends on the company. Like if you're a company that got founded by a bunch of 30-year-olds or 20-year-olds 3 years ago, then that's not going to have the same thing as a person who works for a company who's existed for 100 years. Like it's just going to be completely different things. On the other side.
Can I interrupt to touch on one thing that you said?
Yeah.
So I tried to in Forbes and Wall Street Journal both had articles that gave a good kind of like both sides, or rather trying to give positive examples and negative examples of how things don't work. But one of the negative examples talked about a lack of workplace culture when they tried to implement, I believe that was one of the ones that tried to implement a 5-hour workday. And they encouraged their employees to turn off their phones, discouraged employees from like idle chatter, and the general reasoning was, hey, if you guys can get out of here in 5 hours, we'll get you home at 2 p.m. You can have more of a life. You can be a happier employee. You can be more focused on just your work and make those 5 hours just productive as hell. But what he found was people didn't know each other as well. There wasn't as much of a connection to their company, and so he lost people pretty quick. And also sometimes people felt stressed that they had to be productive in that time period. That might be something that speaks more to the idea of a 5-hour workday than it does to the idea of a 4-day work week. But I could certainly see a world where because you're more cramped for time, you're just like not at work as much. Those less critical time, or there's less time that is less critical. I know it's like, using less twice in the same sentence, but and that could take away, I could see how that could take away from building culture and building like a positive relationships around an office, right?
There's so many weird, I don't mean to cut you off. Like,
no, you're fine.
I really, this sort of stuff is very good. It sounds very nice, but there are things that are genuine concerns. Like right. Companies that do, you have infinite PTO. Statistically, companies that have quote unquote infinite PTO, they have employees that take significantly less than average PTO because they feel guilty for taking that time off. That
makes sense.
Because it's a benefit, and people don't want to feel like they're taking advantage of a thing. Whereas if you say, like, oh, you have 3 weeks of vacation, you have 4 weeks of vacation, you don't feel guilty for taking time off. Like, it's just your time. That's what you have to take. If you don't take it, you're gonna, if you don't do it, you're gonna lose it.
Right.
But if you have infinite, then every day that you take off is something that you are causing your team to have to take more work than you would have if you didn't take it off, and stuff like that. And like, it sounds very nice. It's a very Silicon Valley-esque benefit, but I think Netflix was one of the very big companies that did that early on. I don't know if they still do it these days, but
infinite PTO.
Yeah, infinite PTO, but it resulted in employees taking significantly less paid time off.
That's really interesting. You already filled it up, but it's interesting how like it can disincentivize the thing that you're trying to do anyways, right?
Yeah. So it doesn't surprise me to hear that, limiting the work week has unintended negative consequences potentially. Even to the people, like I don't know, like there, like my example was it's a negative to the employee itself. What you were giving, where people don't stay as long, is negative to the company. But I think just by and large, it has unintended consequences. I think is not surprising, but also it's interesting how it plays out.
There's a lot of stuff that's interesting about it. You're totally right. And my biases are always biased towards like the worker perspective. I have only ever been a worker and not an owner or a manager, so it's very easy for me to sympathize with that perspective. And the idea of a 4-day work week is super appealing, like more time for work-life balance. I know that there's a lot of jobs that we're not all dialed in for all the time, but it is interesting to think of the downsides. I mean, there's one that there was one company that talked about they work in a higher paced environment and competitive environment, and when people weren't available, that meant when they came back, they had to be briefed on it, which took out from other people's times, and they had to have excess communication, and they actually ended up having like more meetings. Which one of the things that I've seen harped on in almost every article I've read is people talking about trying to cut down on meetings or cut down on the wasted time in meetings. And
oh gosh, yeah,
I'm sure you can sympathize with that.
I can. Again, you've hit a chord that I have many opinions about, but yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Yep. No, you're fine. One other thing I wanted to talk about was, do you know what Parkinson's law is?
I do not.
Okay, so it's a joke law, but it is a law that this is tied back as soon as I read this, I was like, oh yeah, we should have been able to know about this like months ago when we talked about this same idea. Parkinson's law is the adage that work expands to fill the time allotted for its completion, which is literally what we've talked about when you've talked about
yeah.
But it's a multifaceted thing, in that most people, when given enough time for a job, will find other things that are tangentially related. People will procrastinate, which we've already talked about. You will find oh gosh, I'm sorry, hold on. What is it? Parkinson's law of triviality says that people within organizations often give undue time and attention to trivial matters. They talk about a related thing called social loafing, which is the tendency of people working in groups to put forth less effort than they would on solo projects. And while this doesn't seem to be like a thing that is explicitly bared out in data, it is something that people talk about. And it adds up to me. I mean, I have this phenomenon for sure, where I am given a X amount of time to complete a project, and I usually complete it near the end of that, not weeks in advance. And I think it's because when you are given the leniency to do, or when you're given enough leniency that you're not pressed for time, you will often find other ways to fill that time, whether it's productive or not. And some of those productive ways are still not going to be as productive.
It's 1,000% true. I'm really good at setting myself not unrealistic deadlines, but like highly aggressive deadlines to get things done, because if I don't do that, then you're 100% right. Like, things will fill the vacuum of your time, and they're oftentimes probably not as important or as pressing as the thing that you actually need to get done. But like, my gosh, yeah, if I can put off doing this big annoying thing a little bit longer and do anything else, I will find a way.
Probably will. Yeah, you probably will.
I'll find a way, or somebody will find a way for me to fill that time. 100%. Nick, we should probably wrap this up. Nick, this week, I want to plug our Patreon podcast. Normally we just read through the thing. I think this week is going to be fun. It is the closest I've ever had to making this be an actual episode. And it honestly very well may be. If you want to check that out, you can go to patreon.com/TaiwaSap.
You can also follow us at TaiwaSap on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. You can find all of that at TaiwaSap.com.
Nick, even though it's Friday, I appreciate you coming and hanging out and potting with me.
I'm so sorry, and you're welcome. This has been the year we started the podcast. Thank you for listening.
Oh, gosh.
I think that was really good.
It was fun. I enjoyed it.